I have been in the public art field for about 14 years now. I, like many of you, went to school at the Maryland College of Art, where I received a BFA in Fiber Material Studies, which isn't the normal path for, I think, for a curator. I immediately went straight into my graduate work at the School of the Arts of Chicago, where I majored in, or took my graduate courses in arts administration. And it was actually through my arts administration courses, I originally had gone to the Art Institute for inner city arts education. I was interested in inner city arts, especially because I was coming from Baltimore with sixth grade, where sixth grade was the dropout rate for public school children. So I was really interested in working in these after-school programs and how community arts would help with that. It was through luck that Millennium Park in Chicago, if you don't know what Millennium Park is, was being built at that time. Millennium Park is a 24-acre art and culture park downtown Chicago, right across from the Art Institute. It features a massive work by architect Frank Gehry, which is a pavilion, one of the largest pieces, most expensive pieces of public art by Nish Kapoor, Cloudgate, and Jean-Marie Pletz's Crown Fountains. At the time Millennium Park was being built, I applied to be their first intern. I was tired of some of the courses I was taking at the Art Institute. I really wanted some real-world experience, and they were looking to do a project on a living collection to be bequeathed to a library. So I took on that project. And it was through that project that I actually really became involved with public art. I was 22 years old at the time. I was very young. I still didn't know what I was going to do. And I was lucky enough to fall into two really great mentors. One, Lois Weisberg, who was the cultural commissioner at the time, and Helen Doria, who was the executive director of Millennium Park. Boeing Galleries had moved their headquarters to Chicago. They bequeathed us a $5 million gift to build 2 outdoor galleries. And I don't know how, but somehow Helen Doria said, "Do you want to coordinate these galleries?" at 22 years old. I said, "Sure." So I never said no to an opportunity that came my way. And I think that's something that's really important. That's what I say to a lot of people, is never say no to an opportunity, because you never know where it's going to lead you. From the city of Chicago and Millennium Park, I was there till about 2012, where I left to become the director of public art for the Maryland State Arts Council back in Maryland, in Baltimore. And it was through that that I had more of an opportunity, as opposed to working with artists. I actually spent 3 years of my life basically legislating in Annapolis, writing a law for a percent for art law for the state. We eventually passed a law in 2013, and Maryland became the 23rd state in the United States to have a percent for art program for capital improvement projects, delineating 1% of project funds to permanent public art in state constructed buildings. After that, I wrote the guidelines, and I said, "I'm done." And I missed working with artists, and I specifically missed working in public spaces, where I could work freely and more of a temporary nature. So after about 12 years of public servancy for both city and state, municipal and state governments, I accepted a position at the Rose Kennedy Greenway. For those of you who don't know what the Rose Kennedy Greenway is, this was it before. You are all, and some of you aren't even from Boston, but you may be too young to remember, but through the middle of Boston ran a giant expressway that cut its city off and its residents off from the waterfront. There was a 1.5-mile expressway system called I-93 that clogged the city. The airports were over here. Traffic was always overrun. There was smog everywhere. It was dirty. People felt unsafe to go towards the water because they had to go underneath the bridge. There was a lot of drug abuse. And so in the early 90s, the state and Massachusetts Department of Transportation started the United States' largest infrastructure project called the Big Dig. The Big Dig lasted somewhere about 20-some years. It cost about $24 billion, so it's very expensive. The state is still paying for it. That's why the T system's so bad. And from that, though, came the Greenway. The Greenway, as you can see, follows the exact same path through the city. It is essentially a marker or a tribute to the elevated highway, and now the highway system sits directly below it. The Rose Kennedy Greenway runs through 5 distinct neighborhoods from the north end to Chinatown of downtown Boston. The Rose Kennedy Greenway is essentially the nonprofit steward that's a partnership with the public and the state to maintain the park system. The Conservancy was started in 2004, and it was established strictly as a fundraising entity because the state did not want to fully pay for all of the 7 fountains that were involved, the zebra granite that was put in, and there also was the state and the city wanted the park controlled organically. So the Rose Kennedy Greenway is the first first organically maintained park in New England, and it's a huge success story. We have multiple programs around the organic horticulture, as well as other entities that come to the Greenway to understand how we maintain a 1.5-mile park system completely organic. A few dates. In 2008, the Conservancy produces the Greenway opening celebration. This was the grand opening. We're actually hitting up our 10-year anniversary as of next year for the Greenway. It's been 10 years already. And then in 2015, MassDOT added 1.3 more acres of land to the Conservancy. Key facts: we're 17 acres across 1.5 miles. We deal with the complex infrastructure of underground equipment rooms, computerized lighting systems, as I said, the 7 fountains. Currently, the funding is 40% of overall budget is from the state, and 60% is privately fundraised for. And that includes all public art, all programs, and events. We're organically maintained, and we produce over 400 free events annually. We have free Wi-Fi throughout the entire park system, and we have one of the largest mobile eats food vending program in the East. And then finally, temporary exhibitions of contemporary public art. So what I'm going to kind of do is just talk us through how we came to be, the public art specifically strategy came to be, and then go into the model of the programs that we have done and artworks that we've commissioned through the past 3 years. And then you guys are going to get to see, before anyone else, even the media, the newest pieces of public art that will be coming this, starting this May through installation of July. So the public art strategy. In 2012, the Greenway embarked on a strategy, knowing that they could, because of the success that they had with their programs and their food vending, they wanted to enliven the city, especially at the Greenway, to a fuller extent. We knew that we could produce programs, we knew that we could host programs, but we wanted the public, especially Boston, that's very steeped in its history and loves its history very much. We wanted to break it out into the contemporary world. We wanted them to introduce the public to contemporary art in an outdoor setting. Prior to that, it was mostly museums, the MFA, the ICA that were doing works, but they weren't doing outdoor work specifically. So this was essentially the first large-scale public art program that would happen within downtown Boston. The strategy was laid out the 5-year public art strategy. Essentially was meant to take our community a step forward in presenting contemporary public art by capitalizing on the energy, creative and adaptability that the Greenway offers as an involving public space. Our curatorial vision and organizational structures are the product of public input, best practice research, and the passionate contributions of artists and advocates from across the country. When we set out for the public art strategy, it took about a year to put together. And through that, we did a series of community meetings. These are the most well-attended community meetings that have ever been given or brought the public in through the Greenway ever in the history up to this point of the 5 years. I mean, we had stuff on how to do, what type of benches to put in, and people would come to that, but we had anywhere between 50 to 250 people coming to these meetings. And this is mostly members of the public that lived along the Greenway. Essentially, 3 things came out of that strategy. One was that all artworks that were going to be placed on the Greenway should be contemporary and temporary. That's for a number of reasons. One, we don't have room or the budget for permanence. 2, we lease the land from MassDOT. So anything, should our lease expire, MassDOT would have to be responsible for that artwork. And as I think we've seen in many cities across the country, if you do put permanence in and you don't have a bequeath or you don't have a specific agenda or contract with an agency, they will sometimes just remove the artwork and throw it away, or give it back to the artist. 2, we're above a public highway system. We have multiple vibrations that are happening. The organization and the park system is constantly vibrating. You may not fully feel it, but that's an issue that can also help degrade the work or erode the work over time. And 3rd, with permanence, you always have to have an endowment, essentially for upkeep and maintenance, and that can be almost as expensive as the artwork itself. The second thing that came out of it was the hiring of a public art curator, which was myself in 2014. And then finally, they wanted to do basically a coming out party or coming out celebration of an international competition that was open to artists internationally wide to do a large-scale, multi-million-dollar artwork. And that was the artwork of Jana Stewart. As a curator, I look at multiple different frameworks to inspire artists' proposals and curations. One of those is connections, projects that unite the segmented parks and connect the individual communities along the Greenway. The second is interactivity, projects that engage visitors with the park and one another. Third is civic dialogue, projects that highlight freedom of expression, freedom of speech, diversity, and other civic community issues. And finally, ecology and environment, projects that deal directly with the issues of sustainability and the environment. I also look at two, what's called platforms and magnets. Excuse me. So each year, I consider artistic opportunities, the needs of the Greenway, and the aspirations of the Boston community to develop the public art project and curation for that following year. To guide this forum, I choose from a menu of platforms and magnets project types. Short-term platform projects take advantage of existing park conditions and are intended to support diverse artworks over time. And these are kind of a few examples of those. I've been doing an introduction of music and performance based around the artwork so that connect with the artwork in some way or another. I did a piece called The Local, which was only local-based artists that also worked towards talking about the history of the site in which these artworks were placed. And then finally, long-term magnet projects bring local, national, and international attention to the Greenway, drawing visitors and public art pilgrims alike. The magnet projects make the Greenway a destination that are impressive in scale, interactivity, and artistic excellence. Planning and implementation of these projects are multi-year endeavor and usually require a massive fundraising budget. Jana Stewart, did anyone see this artwork, or has anyone ever seen a Jana Stewart artwork in person? Yes, so you know it was actually one of the most complex projects that Boston ever undertook. We actually worked with 3 different buildings to attach a 625-foot by 325-foot net that hung over the Fort Point Channel. The net was engineered for hurricane winds as well as the buildings, so if the building fell, the net was falling, and if the net fell, the buildings were falling. It was one of the most complex projects I myself had ever undertaken. And the multiple partners that played a part in this were not only the building owners, the city, the state, the FAA, emergency management, the police department, both city and local, the fire department, both city and local, as well as emergency management. And it was one of the most successful projects I think Boston had ever seen. And these are just a few other aerial photos of this piece. I think what was really interesting about this project too was that it really introduced the public, especially Boston, to another form of public art. We have over 75 bronze statues scattered throughout downtown Boston, mostly white males on horses. This was completely the opposite, and I think that's really important to underline because this said that fire art can be public art, that ethereal works can be public art, that lying on a hammock, having this experience of being a free weight of moving underneath this hammock, or laying on a hammock, looking at this work, you kind of became one with the piece. We also saw that with this artwork, it really changed the way in which people use this public space. This is one of the best examples of the way in which you think you know your environment, especially those that live or work or move throughout the Greenway on a daily basis. But the moment we put this in, people saw their environment in a completely different way. And when we took it down after 6.5 months, everyone said, "Oh, it looks so empty." It had always been empty. You just never noticed the surroundings before. So I think that's really a really important thing to highlight, especially with public artworks, is the fact that they change your environment on a daily basis. Whether it's raining, whether it's sunny, whether it's snowing, everything changes. Another example of a large-scale magnet project would be the Outer Way Circle of Animal Zodiac Heads that came in last year. This was an interesting project. I went back and forth with this because I said, I'm bringing in bronze, after I just said that I didn't want to do any more bronze. But Iowa Way is probably one of the most well-known contemporary artists that you most likely will only see in museum or gallery settings. Bringing this artwork here, A Circle of Animal Zodiac Heads, this was produced in 2010, and it was the first artwork that he created for public outdoor use while he was still on house arrest in Beijing after he was arrested by the Chinese government for speaking out against it. And Circle of Animal Zodiac Heads is really not really about the zodiacs themselves. They're actually really talking about the heads that were pillaged and stolen during the Opium War within the Beijing Summer Palace in around 1860. And what he was talking about is this idea of actually who owns culture? Who owns these heads? These heads were actually created by 2 Jesuit priests that were working in the king's or the emperor's palace at the time. So they weren't really made by the Chinese. They were put there by Jesuits, and then they were stolen by the British and French. And so what he did is he was also bringing attention to the fact that once they were stolen, they were put on the black market. These heads were about this large, so they're about almost tabletop. And they originally acted as fountain heads, as telling a clock, or as a clock. And so you knew what time it was by looking at the fountain, by who was spitting, essentially. Once they were put on the black market, the Chinese government kind of went after them, and up to now, 2017, only 9 of the 12 heads have actually been recovered and returned back to China. 2 of the heads were recently were sold at Sotheby's for around, I think it was something like $3.6 million. But it was actually a false bid that was put in by one of Ai Weiwei's studio assistants, and the owners of that was actually Yves Saint Laurent's partner. So there's a massive history about this. But what I wanted to also say about this is that I wanted to return these heads back to a situation that they came from, essentially what Ai Weiwei was talking about. We put them around the Rings Fountain. The Rings Fountain is probably the most visited spot on the Greenway. It's essentially the water park. It's essentially an area where families and kids and grandparents come to play in hot weather. It's also a crossway to the aquarium. And so I wanted to infuse as many people, whether they know who Ai Weiwei is, whether they actually understand the full concept of what these heads really mean, I wanted to immerse them in this idea that they have this experience, they have this memory of this. This is also was a wonderful kind of partnership in the fact that at the time I was working to curate these and bring these into Boston, the MFA was doing an exhibition, curating an exhibition called Megacities Asia. And so I worked with the curator, Al Miner, and his cohort over there, as they were bringing in 2 other works by Ai Weiwei. And then the Harvard Arts Museum had a video piece by Ai Weiwei. So in 2016, you were able to see Ai Weiwei in 3 different locations. 1 in basically an educational museum, 2 at the MFA, which is a very well-renowned national organization, and 3, a major piece outdoors in public space that you can touch and interact with. And I'll tell you, I've never seen anyone interact with bronzes the way that I've seen that people interact with them last year. People would come out and photograph themselves with their own zodiacs. Whether we know it or not, we're all born under specific zodiac signs. We have a connection to this work. I always say about public art, too, is that I don't care whether you love it or hate it, I just want you to consider it. That's all you need to do, and then you've done your job. You know, tell me why you hate it, tell me why you love it. One of our most popular, and one of our, probably our most, the cornerstone of the public art program at the Greenway is the Greenway Wall at Dewey Square. And I'll talk a little bit about this through partnerships. Partnership is one of the main ways, as I kind of just mentioned with Ai Weiwei and the MFA and Harvard. But the Greenway Wall specifically started out essentially as a way to partner with large-scale institutions and museums to kind of showcase their point of view as an organization. We're not a silo organization. We create connections, and what I want to do is really create connections that pull and push you off the Greenway. I never want to be siloed. I want you to come, and I want you to go to the museum to see this artwork in a different way. I want to have you learn it through a lecture series at the MFA. I want you to learn, go to a lecture series at the MFA, and then come to the Greenway and see it in public space and how it changes. So in partnerships with the MFA, the ICA, MIT List Visual Arts Center, we commissioned, in connection with each one of these, starting in 2012, 4 different murals. Ostiemios, MFA, Matthew Ritchie, I'm sorry, Ostiemios, ICA, Matthew Ritchie, ICA, Shanique Smith, the MFA, Lawrence Weiner, MIT Visualist Arts Center. And what I love about this mural program is that we're able to really showcase, one, not only the organization's point of view and maybe a large-scale exhibition that they're having or a permanent piece of artwork that may be in that collection to pull and push you off, but really it's a chance for artists to come out and do these large-scale works that they've never done before. It's also a chance to interact and have lunch under a large-scale painting that you can't do in a museum. It's a chance to enliven the city in a completely opposite way than it existed before. This is a utilitarian piece of architecture. This is essentially an air ventilation intake structure. It pulls bad air out and pushes good air into 93. There's just 3 giant fans inside here. That's it. But we were able to work with MassDOT, use this building, and we changed it out yearly. It's actually 70 by 76 feet. It's an award-winning and eagerly awaited annual focal point of the Contemporary Public Art Program. And actually, two of the murals, Ostiemios and Shanique Smith, both have previously won Best Public Art Pieces in the United States, courtesy of the Americans for the Arts and the Public Art Network. Only up to 50 of those are given a year, so we're very happy to have that be on our resume at the same time. Now, as I talk about partnerships and you know, I came in right when we were working on the Shanique Smith mural. And oddly enough, Shanique and I are both alumni of MICA at the same time. She had a large show at the MFA called Bright Matter. And so this was an extension of that, to push you out. So we did a lecture series, we did a public program on the Greenway around this as well at the same time. But I wanted to change the way in which we were also working to curate around. With last year's in 2016, we had kind of local-based work that dealt with climate change. We had history, we had zodiacs. We had kind of this confluence of all these different mishmashes. So I wanted to start moving forward in a way in creating a cohesive body of work that would lead you throughout the Greenway, that you would understand collectively just as you would at the MFA or in any other museum. So this year, going into 2017, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, I wanted to create a program where all the artwork worked together in some way or another. And with that in mind, I decided not to pursue a partnership with an organization and to actually internally curate this next mural, which we opened in 2016. And that was the work of Mehdi Gandayamu. And this is actually just Pamela Carmini, everyone knows, maybe not. I actually met
she's on sabbatical.
She's on sabbatical, but this is how I met, and I'm associated with Dr. This through Pamela. Mehdi Gandayamu was actually an Iranian artist, and he had never shown in the United States before. And I wanted the Greenway yet again to be another destination in which to showcase new work that had never been established in the United States. It's called Spaces of Hope, and this mural takes us into an uncanny dreamscape and captures the fundamental quality of Gandayamu's work. His perspective on the nuanced nature of hope, fear, and uncertainty about the future. Gazing upwards as one, the figures in the mural move forward with purpose. It is impossible to know how many have come before them and how many await behind. Will they reach their destination? Will they escape the labyrinth of darkness they are trapped in and move into the light? What is waiting for them beyond? Through offering them with a chance of escape, the red balloons could burst at any moment. He actually created this mural when he came to the United States for the first time in May of 2016. If you don't know, just south, or just west, I should say west of this, is the South Station. And South Station sees over 440 people coming out of its transit system daily. And Mehdi had gotten up really early and was watching these people move through the transit corridor in these lines, all moving with purpose, with hope. And so this is where he actually got the inspiration for this idea of these movements of people going in and out, going to this unknown destination, essentially. Mehdi actually also is probably the foremost known muralist in Tehran. He's done over 100 of them since 2005. And I brought Mehdi specifically because of his use of force perspective. This mural took over a month to create, actually, with 2 assistants. And I'm going to show you a really quick video, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it, actually. There we go. Yeah, it's me. I don't know if you can hear it, but. of there. But what I found, one, I'll get back to Playful Perspectives in a second of what the curation is about and why I brought Mehdi here. But what I want to say about bringing Mehdi specifically is that this is the first time that, since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, that an Iranian artist had been produced both concurrently in the United States and in Tehran. So that says something pretty phenomenal. Secondly, the diversity aspect of Boston, I think if you're from Boston, you may know that the diversity is not probably the most diverse city. And so any opportunity I can to bring in local, national, international, a diversity of artists and art forms, I take a chance. I knew that there was going to be a chance, especially with the current political climate that we were about to come into, not realizing the climate we were going to be in, to bring Mehdi here to Boston and the public reaction that he would get. I have to say, I've never seen an artist interact more seamlessly with the community and take a loving interest in coming down and talking to them. People from the financial district who are watching this mural come up and be placed up would bring him water and lunch every day. He'd sit with the public and break bread with them. It was one of the most beautiful ways I've seen an artist actually work with the public. And that's what I think really is amazing about public art, is when you can get the artist there to communicate with the community. It doesn't always have to be the community dictating to the artist what they want. It can be just that interaction. I think it's something really important to hold on to and grasp. Because sometimes, in some instances, within city and state municipal programs where it's tax-funded dollars, the public feel they have the right to tell the artist what they need. And sometimes by bringing an outsider in to look at the community as an outsider and either call attention to needs or wants or connections that the community normally wouldn't see is probably sometimes the best thing. I'm not saying there isn't a room or a place for working with the community in the other way, but it's just, you have to give the benefit of the doubt that the artist is going to produce something really beautiful. So just hold on to that. I've been on the other side of the stick, and it's hard. But also by bringing Mehdi in, we were able to get fantastic press and coverage for our organization, fantastic press and coverage for Mehdi, not only locally but internationally. He made Newsweek, he made Hyperallergic, he made Beautiful Decay, he made The New Yorker. I mean, he was all over the place. And it's all because it was the first time he was coming to the United States. And I'm going to come back to Mehdi a little bit later when I talk about this year, because essentially his work is the start of what is called Playful Perspectives, which is the curation moving forward. But I want to talk about just a few more things. One, the year of the zodiacs. When I first started the Greenway, one of the main challenges we had is actually communicating and creating work in Chinatown, which is one of Boston's oldest ethnic neighborhoods. And it's one of the two remaining, or third largest, I should say, Chinatowns in the United States behind New York and San Francisco. There was this issue around a public space that we had where it was at this intersection of about 6 different intersections of different streets coming to merge together, excuse me. And nobody wanted to be there. There was a new development that had started called Radian, and Radian had given us some mitigation money to actually create a public space in front of the building where this intersection happened. We had a problem, or they were having problems with the fact that everyone thought that the Greenway ended at Dewey Square, didn't continue on to Chinatown. Most of the Chinatown residents who had lived there for many, many years stayed in what's called Old Chinatown. So we wanted to create a way to draw people throughout the space as opposed to just congregating in one area. So I knew that this was going to have to be a multi-year aspect, and that I didn't have time to constantly reinvent the wheel with curations here. And so I wanted to pay tribute to the community and create a connection for those that have lived there their entire lives, as well as the millennials and others kind of contemporaries that were moving into Radian building, which was kind of seen as a gentrification move. And so I curated a 12-year curation. We're on our 3rd year. It's all based around the year of the zodiacs, and it's having contemporary artists reinterpret each year's zodiac sign. The first piece was actually done by an artist named Kyusokyo called Wandering Sheep, which was a series of 10 paper sheep that were up for about 5.5 months, that were on multiple different platforms, that were kind of interacting with each other, but also looking out for each other. And Kyusokyo was using the sheep as a metaphor for the immigrant experience. This idea that they're shepherded and moved from one area to another for food, for safety, for warmth, and for comfort. And then there's one sheep that wasn't on a platform. It was all the way over here on a waterfall, and it was by itself. And that was essentially kind of the representation of all of us kind of going off in the world and kind of taking that chance by ourselves. The second was a public competition by Don Cannell called Monkey See. It was talking about the inquisitive nature of where we come as a species. And then finally, this year, we're on a third year right now, the year of the rooster. I have an artwork by an artist named Chris Templeman that actually created a 3D printing machine that's printing 2017 roosters that's based off of a scan of a rooster from the European collection of the MFA. And every 3 hours and 44 minutes, the machine pushes it off into this little area down here, and the public can pick it up and take it. Chris was really interested in this idea of democratic art, especially public art, that public art is for the people. This has become probably the water cooler, the new water cooler of Boston, the conversations that happen around here, the fact that people will sit there for 3 hours, stand there for 3 hours, be on work calls, wanting to get one of these. We get emails daily, how can I get a rooster? So you gotta come out, just wait. During the winter storms we had, people would come out here because they thought they had a better chance. We have people who live across the street that have now binoculars and telescopes that watch it for us daily to run out and get one, or if the machine's malfunctioning. This was a challenging project because it's essentially a glorified hot glue gun. And with all technology-based works, there are glitches. But we've actually had a 92% rate since January 28th when we put it in. We produced over 450 roosters. I'm working towards what's going to happen at the end of this. This is going to print through February 25th of next year. Bringing everyone together who got a rooster for essentially a class photo to share their experiences, essentially. It's been really phenomenal the way that they've interacted with the artist as well. He's local, he's from Somerville. And this is actually the artist's first public art piece. So it was, again, taking a chance on something that had never been done before. We worked for a year testing the machine in both ovens and freezers to make sure that it was doable. Because with solar radiation inside this component, it gets up to about 165 degrees. So we're actually installing an air conditioner this week. But this has been really successful, and the Chinatown community, as well as the local community that live around it, have been so welcome to these opportunities for interactions in this public space. Again, talking about the local, national, international, all kind of converging together. This was a product, these two next artworks were products of an RFP competition for state-based artists. Jana Stewart used a terminology called midden to create these 5 giant clusters of oyster shells. When the big dig was happening, they unearthed these giant piles or middens of oyster shells in this specific area. So she used these massive 4-foot resin shells along with light-based works that changed during the night to call attention to the history of the site. And then Carolina Aragon did this piece called High Tide up in the north end that was really talking about climate change and sea level rise. These are over 500 reeds and rods that had lenses that changed in the color. They spun in the wind. There was this beautiful kind of noise to them as they moved about. And then also Cowan Verdi's pink lines with concentric arches on yellow, or Boston Bloom. I commissioned this artist, who's mostly a video artist and a technology-based artist, to create a static piece for this location. This was an area it's a large garden area here we'd taken over from MassDOT, where the public was basically using it as a restroom. And so we took it over, redesigned the park system, and created an area that was welcoming, that people now sit and have coffee at. They don't use it as a restroom, they don't use it for their dogs. And so just the power of adding a little color and a little design can go a long way in changing human behavior. And then also, really quickly, Halsey Burgun. You know, not every project is going to be a success. You can't change the minds of everyone in 6 months, 3 months, even a day. I commissioned an artwork by a very well-known artist named Halsey Burgun, who's phenomenal. And I wanted a piece that was going to connect both the zodiacs that were in Chinatown to the Ai Weiwei pieces, and he created an amazing piece called From the Mouths of Monkeys. And From the Mouths of Monkeys was a 8-bit video channel, or excuse me, 8-bit sound installation that had speakers mounted to poles, in 4 different poles, that spoke to each other. And what he did is he interviewed all about 12 individuals that were born from 1932 to 2016. They were all considered years of the monkeys, born in the years of the monkeys. And he was looking and asking them questions about love, life, relationship, religion, politics, to see where the crossovers were for those that are essentially born in those years of the monkeys, whether there's correlations for those. Now, I've learned a lot. This was the first sound installation that the Greenway had done. There's a big difference between ambient sound and intentional sound. And I would get emails every day saying, is this NPR? Or is this, my dog can't poop? I mean, these are things that I get from the public daily. So just be prepared if you want to be in the public art field. Because they didn't fully understand it, or they didn't want to understand it, because it interrupted their day. In a way that that wasn't just a visual simulation, it was an audio simulation, which not everyone's ready for. And maybe it doesn't always work in public settings. Maybe it's better suited for museums or outdoor sculpture parks where it's you have this idea that you're going in to hear these things. But I'm happy we did it anyways, because I introduced people to it. Some people really loved it, and again, some people really hated it, and they told me why they hated it. Now, how do I get all these messages across? A lot of it is through a program that I started when I first got here called the Arts Ambassador Program. This is essentially connecting artwork with the public, and it's actually in its third year. It's made up of local residents and volunteers, usually about 18 to 20 every year. There are a variety of people that are in art school or are in school or are retirees or are in the medical field that just really love public space and public art. In the past 2 years, they put in over 1,700 volunteer hours, which for a nonprofit is massive. They are located out with the artwork. They usually have what's called a draw cart, which is an artistic-based movable mobile art cart, or the free library that we move around to interact with people and draw people in and explain about the artwork. They wear t-shirts that say, for Janet, it said, ask me how many knots are up there. Or for the Zodiac, it said, what's your Zodiac sign? As an easy way to introduce and say, we're not like, Save the Children Fund asking for money. We're here to talk about artwork. And you can talk to us if you want to, if you don't, you don't. But they've been an invaluable asset to the Greenway. Last year, we had, out of the 18 individuals, they spoke 9 different languages, so they're able to interact with a variety of constituents, both tourist and local. And they're just a wonderful group to work with. And so every year we recruit for arts ambassadors. If you live within the Boston city limits, I encourage you to apply. And then finally, I know we're getting down to it because we've got to move on, but I just want to talk a little bit more about partnerships. Along with the magnet and platform projects, I also love what's called pop-ups. And pop-ups are like 1 day, 2 hour, 3 hour events, essentially. And it was wonderful when Pam Peabody Essex Museum curated the first US showing Theo Jensen's Duran beasts. The Greenway, I partnered with them to use the Greenway as a space to walk these walking beasts. We were the second location in a day. It was at City Hall, and we were the second location that day. And we brought in over 2,000 people that came to see these beasts walk. I partnered with local developer and public art firm GT Public to bring in Hank Willis Thomas and the Cause Collective's Truth Booth, which is a traveling blow-up installation that invites the viewers to walk in, sit down, push record on the video player, and they have 2 minutes to tell them what the truth is. And so these are essentially creating community portraits all across the world. And this has been initiated since 2011. It's traveled everywhere. They just recently finished up a 50-state tour before the presidential primaries in November. And then finally, Design Biennial Boston, which is a partnership between the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics, Pink Comet Gallery, the Boston Society of Architecture. This is a public competition that's open to designers of 10 years or younger to create an installation on the Greenway. They're awarded $10,000 each. They can fundraise more. And then showcase the work for about 6 months. This was the 2015 iteration, and this is going into the 2017 iteration. Again, they're using the concepts of playful perspectives. I'm just going to push through here. So, playful perspectives. You guys are getting, this is the first, you guys are really the first public to see this, so, hurrah. So going back to that idea of MIDI and having cohesion with all the artworks along the Greenway. Last year was a very conceptual-based season. We had the works of Highway Way, which were a little hard to understand unless you really explained it. Lawrence Wiener's text-based mural, which everybody thought was a billboard. So I wanted something that was going to be really interactive and something that was really, you could just get it. You could just get it. I wanted to use social media. I wanted to use the fact that we have our cameras out every 5 minutes to take a selfie about something. So I came up with this idea of playful perspectives, and I started looking at artists that were using perspective in their work in some way or another. Clearly, Mehdi Gadianlu, with his forced perspective in his large-scale mural. I was interested in social perspective, of historical perspective, of optical illusion. And so coming in May is a work by Meredith James called Far From the Setting in Which I Find Myself Now. And it's essentially an Ames room, or a three-walled, off-kilter trapezoidal room built with a false perspective. So it appears regular from one viewpoint, while people inside the room seem to be different sizes depending on where they stand. It really invites you to be an active participant, and it only works if you're in it. This will be located up in the North End. Mark Reigelman, Meeting House. This is going to be in the Wharf District Park. Mark Reigelman is dealing with historical perspective and social perspective. This is based off of the Quaker Meeting House in Pembroke, Massachusetts. And it's essentially, it looks like it's either rising or sinking into the ground. This was a house that was traditionally, the community came to talk about local events, laws, happiness, celebrations. And what Mark has done is he's shrunken it down completely. It's about 15 feet at its highest. And it's going to become an area in which we're going to program around social issues or have lunchtime concerts for community to gather in a park system. He's also talking about what lies beneath. You know, the Greenway itself, you know, where we sit currently today, used to be the original harbor. It was then covered over, the Tri-Mountains were cut down and it was filled in, and then it was land and community lived there. And then the community was disrupted and a highway was built. And the highway was dismantled and it was put underground and the park was built. So it's this idea of multiple layers that are happening here. The work of Tasha Halong, balancing acts. These are actually sculptures that look three-dimensional but are actually two-dimensional. At their widest, as you pass by them, they're about 2 inches thick. Tasha Halong is mostly well known within the graffiti world. This is his first large-scale public art piece. There'll be about 2 to 3 of these pieces. They're highly interactive. You can go up and it looks like you're pushing it on your friend and photograph that. And also this idea of illusion, of seeing something as you walk past it, it goes away. Again, this idea of changing the nature of space. And then designed by Neil Boston, which will be coming in June of this year at the same time. So at this point, we're going to be activating every single area of the park parcels except for 2. There'll be about 12 to 13 pieces of work, plus the programs that we'll be doing, plus the lectures that we'll be doing. I want to thank you guys so much for inviting me.